Good morning. Happy Thursday morning. It's a gorgeous sunny day here in Madison today. And I'm going to start today by asking for any of you who find that you have no problem stating your truth in a relationship or in a conflict. As a matter of fact, you boldly dive in and say what needs to be said. And maybe sometimes you have some regrets about that. Or sometimes it comes back to bite you in the ass. Well, today, that's what we're going to talk about. This video is for you. We're following up from the conversation we had last week where we're talking about balance and all about how to find and create balanced relationships. Because when your relationships are out of balance, it doesn't feel good. There's not a flow. And if you remember, balance is all about how to balance your wants and needs with someone else's. Now, last week we talked about it from the end of the spectrum where you back down. You don't have the courage to speak your truth. You think, you know what, it'll just get better. They didn't mean any harm. I'm not going to say anything. And if you remember the dandelion principle that we talked about, when you don't deal with conflict and tension in the moment, when it pops up, it spreads and the roots grow deeper. Now, so with balance, we're looking at finding that win-win. The example we talked about last week is really a lose-win because I'm going to back down. I'm not going to speak my truth. I lose, you win. I defer to whatever you need because maybe I don't have the courage. This week, what we're looking at is the win-lose. For those of you who fall in the other end of the spectrum where I'm going to win. I'm going to say what I need to say. I'm going to get my needs met. And maybe without the compassion to really understand and think about how it lands for the other person. So I win, you lose. Again, we're trying to find that win-win. Now, if you do that and it works for you, great. Turn the video off, go on about your day, go golfing, go for a walk, turn on Netflix, whatever. That's fine. This model and this concept isn't for everybody. But if you find that you are competitive in your relationships and you speak your truth maybe a little bit too harshly, then listen on because I've got a tip today that I want to share with you. And for those of you who do find that courage to be direct, to be bold, to state your truth, and maybe not do it in the most thoughtful way. It may be because you're competitive and you grew up in an environment where you had to fight. Maybe you had a big family and you had to fight to get your voice heard. Or maybe you do it because you aren't necessarily thinking about the needs and wants of the other person. It's not on your radar screen. Or maybe you do it because you don't know any other way. So last week I shared a story that I'm going to bring back today and look at it from the other perspective. And I shared a story of my colleague when we were having a working session, a full day working session, and a couple hours in, I pull out my phone and check my messages. And she says to me, "That's not working for me." And if you remember, I just shut down. I didn't say, "Oh, sorry, oh my God, I'm so sorry, that's rude. I was expecting to get a message from the media and I need to check it. I should have let you know." I didn't say anything in the moment. Instead, I just shut down. I was at that other end of the spectrum where I didn't have the courage to speak my truth, and unfortunately it had a really negative impact. There was tension in the relationship. Now, my colleague didn't know why. Today we're going to look at it from her viewpoint. So in that moment, what would have helped me is to be able to state my truth. And sometimes you can do it in a playful way, to really deal with that dandelion in the moment before it spreads and becomes toxic. Well, for those of you who fall on this other end of the spectrum, you may take a shovel and dig out the whole dandelion and do damage while you're at it. That's not always the most thoughtful response either. So a couple months after my colleague and I talked about this situation, she said, "You know what, Darcy, I get this feedback and it's kind of a blind spot for me because I've just always learned to be direct and I had no idea that that shut you down." Now, I own my part in it. But what's interesting is that she and I talked through that. She started to own her part. And the tip that I want to bring you today is to try using a soft startup. Now, this is research that comes from the Gottman Institute in Washington. And they have studied relationships and conflict. They have phenomenal research and books and papers. If you check out their website, it's really interesting as they have studied relationships. So what they have found, what Dr. Gottman found, is that how you start a conversation is how it's going to end. So if it starts harshly, chances are it's going to end harshly. It's going to continue to be tense and maybe even grow in the intensity. And so as my friend and I talked about this, and she realized that that was a harsh startup. And what she started to do, but we both worked on our part. We've been great friends and colleagues for years, where she will come in and say, hey, Darce, I want to chat about this because you checking your email while we're working feels really disrespectful, and it feels like you're not present and you're not connected. And that softer startup opened up the space for me to say, oh my gosh, you're right, I'm sorry, instead of shutting down. And so this week, your weekly workout is to try a soft startup. So instead of coming home on a Friday night, you're leaving tomorrow for vacation for 2 weeks, and you notice that your spouse didn't take the garbage out. Instead of storming through the door and saying, oh, why didn't you take the garbage out? We're going to be gone for 2 weeks and it's going to stink by the time we get back. And then, of course, your spouse probably gets defensive and, well, I didn't take it out because, and then starts throwing blame at you, and that whole cycle continues, and it probably doesn't end in a positive way. Instead, I challenge you to think about how might you soften your startup. So coming home and going through the door and saying, hey, honey, how was your day? Well, I'm excited for our vacation tomorrow, but I wonder if we can chat for a minute. So I'm really frustrated that you told me to take the garbage out, and I notice it's still here. And after 2 weeks, it's gonna stink. And who knows? Your spouse may say, you know what? Monday was a holiday, and so garbage actually isn't coming tomorrow. It's delayed a day. So I talked to the neighbors, and they agreed that they'd put the garbage out tomorrow night so nobody knows that we're not home. Or they may say whatever they say, but chances are, by having a soft startup, it's going to open up the opportunity to have a dialogue and actually come to a win-win resolution rather than just pick a fight and get into a conflict, and then the whole evening is miserable and the first start of your trip is miserable. I've been there. We've all been there, right? To think about how to have a soft startup. Another example might be if you are at work and you've got a big annual team meeting coming up and you busted your butt to get your report done in time, your annual report, and email comes out and it includes all the other directors' reports and yours isn't there. Instead of firing off an email saying, I can't believe that I busted my butt to get this to you in time and it's not included in the email, I encourage you to pause. To think about what could be a more balanced approach. How could you use a soft startup? And then act differently from that place. And maybe it looks more like the email says, thanks for sending the reports for our upcoming annual retreat. I so appreciate all the work you've done behind the scenes to make sure that it goes well. I noticed that my report wasn't included. And I'm wondering if you have a copy of it that you could send it out, or if you want me to hit reply all and make sure everybody has it. And do you see how having that softened startup can bring your relationship back into balance? That you can focus on finding the win-win. What are my needs and wants, and what are yours? And how do we get to that place? So that's your weekly workout. Don't take that shovel and dig up the whole dandelion. Think about how to use a soft startup. And let me know what your results are. as I started to learn and teach these skills, I hear all sorts of examples of people who have transformed their relationships, and they stay in a space of being able to create a balanced relationship. So I'd love to hear from you. And I also want to end today's video by just saying Happy Mother's Day. I bought myself some flowers this year. Last year, I had a tough Mother's Day. It was not fun. It was challenging. It was emotional. And this year I decided to step into strength a little bit. If you remember, strength in the model is all about, sort of consciously choosing how you want to show up in your life. I decided I'm going to have a good Mother's Day this year. And so I bought myself some flowers to enjoy for the week and through Mother's Day. And I wish all of you who are mothers a happy Mother's Day. All of you who are trying to be mothers, who are struggling, or maybe you are a mother at heart, you mother people in your life. Wherever you are on that journey, I hope you have a wonderful Mother's Day and a great weekend. And I'll look forward to seeing you next week for our Thoughtfully Fit Live, where I'll talk more about how to lead your life from the inside out. And just a reminder, if you're interested in some more support, the small group coaching early bird registration discount goes until the end of the month. So check it out. It starts in September. It's 4 months. It's for women in Madison. It's a small group where we really create a very safe and courageous environment for you to be supported in identifying your goals, what a fulfilled life looks like for you, and then figuring out the obstacles, what gets in the way of that, both internal and external, and helping create some support and accountability for you to clear those obstacles out of the way. It could be a really nice way to end the year as we come into the next year, because the 4 months will end at the end of December and to start off 2018 right. Thanks so much for joining me. And if you've enjoyed these videos, I'd appreciate if you share it and forward it to somebody. I have loved the opportunity to just share some of the wisdom of my decades of reading and research. I'm sort of obsessive about learning about human dynamics and communication and conflict. So I appreciate so much you watching and sharing any of these videos and messages with others who you think might find them valuable. Thanks. Have a great weekend.